And it's time now to take a look through the French newspapers, and for that I'm joined by Caterina Vitosi. Hello, Caterina.
Hello.
Starting off with the right-leaning daily Le Figaro.
Yes, and on their front page they look at the relationship between the French people and Europe. 20 years on from the Maastricht Treaty, the treaty that was so decisive, that really led the way to the Eurozone and the single currency. They asked the same French people that voted in that treaty, if you had the decision now, would you still say yes? And according to the paper, in fact, they wouldn't. 64% of French people, according to Le Figaro, would vote no to the Maastricht Treaty. So, you know, really putting into question the Eurozone and how trustworthy people are of it now. They also show some figures saying that 76% of French people say they don't have as much faith in the European Union as perhaps they once did. This 76% saying they don't trust the Eurozone leaders to really be able to lift the region out of its current financial difficulties. However, it does say that despite all this, 65% of French people wouldn't want to return to the franc. You know, they want to stay in the euro. However, some perhaps worrying figures for the French President François Hollande, as the paper details. You know, in the coming weeks and months, we're going to be seeing more and more talk about France's involvement in the EU fiscal treaty. You know, another important vote that's going to happen to really bring France into even closer fiscal ties with the whole of the eurozone. So perhaps these aren't quite the sort of financial approval figures that the French government would want to be seeing at this time.
All right, we're going to stick with that paper because it looks at anti-US riots here in Paris.
Yes, this weekend. We saw some protests in central Paris around the US embassy. Demonstrably, these were against the anti-Islam film that we've been hearing lots of and seeing lots of riots about across the world, in fact. Now, the Figaro says that these weren't enormous, in terms of turnout, they weren't an enormous amount of people, 200 max. However, it does go a little bit in depth into kind of who the makeup of these protesters was. And according to the French government and to police who were there, they say lots were quite young, French young men in particular. However, it does say that behind these riots, they were organised via social media sites, and they say behind them were hardline activists. And that it's the fact that there is this sort of undercurrent of perhaps this hardline extremism that has got a lot of authorities and the French Interior Ministry quite concerned, and in fact it is an issue they say they are going to be trying to address more in the coming weeks.
Okay, let's take a look now at financial paper Les Echos. It's got some rare positive news on the front page.
Absolutely, I was so overjoyed to be able to show you this paper, Claire. Some incredible positive financial news. The governor of the Bank of France, Christian Noyer, saying that the risk of a banking crisis in the Eurozone region is easing. He says last year things were looking pretty dire, but for now, for once, there are sunnier horizons in view. He says that the Eurozone 6,000 banks are in a much more solid and secure position now than they were a year ago. And he does sort of give himself a little pat on the back, saying that central banks and the role that they've had in trying to support these industries have had a big part to play in restoring confidence in the markets.
I'm not sure the French government, though, would say things are looking sunny, and there's a report on its spending in Le Parisien.
Yes, spending, and rather it's the wastage of spending, particularly with regards to government-funded agencies. Now, this is a report carried out by the Interior Ministry, ordered by the French government, which says that, in fact, there's billions of euros of money being wasted on sort of government agencies that don't really seem to have much of a purpose. It particularly talks about areas like health, where it says this is the kingdom of shadows and doubling up, where you've got 3 agencies where perhaps one would suffice. And in fact, the report says that there could be, in fact, 2 billion euros of savings if these agencies were able to be a bit more streamlined, a bit more coordinated, and particularly points out if, for example, in areas like health, if everyone knew what their job was.
All right, thank you very much, Caterina, for that look at the French newspapers.